sorry. We have all these folks actually here to answer any of our questions. So if you think of something, write it down real quickly so we can ask at the appropriate time. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn everything over to Pastor Jeff, and thank you.
You guys hear me? Oh, there we go. Thank you for being here at our Deaf Awareness Workshop. First, I'm going to do some intros regarding introductory stuff with deaf awareness, kind of surface, but to give you a picture and help you understand and be more aware of the deaf. And then after that, you can ask me or any of the other deaf or hard of hearing. Kevin's hard of hearing, you can ask him. Anyone deaf or hard of hearing. Amanda is deaf, or Coda, like Amy, you can ask, or other deaf here, Mike, myself, feel free. Okay? Oh, hard of hearing, right? Hard of hearing, yes. And I'm trying to remember Terry. There we go, Terry. Awesome. Okay, well, let's get started. First of all, we're talking about my family, and I want to introduce you to them. Yeah, I'm proud, so I have to introduce my family, right? Amen. So you'll see here, I've got 4 sons. My oldest is on the far end next to me. That's Noah. And then he's married, and this is his wife, Christine. He's been married for 7 years now, 2 children, 1 girl, 1 boy. The girl is going to be 7 next week on the 12th of November. The boy's 3. He was born on Valentine's Day, February 14th. And then my second son, he lifts weights with Darwin. They like to keep in touch with each other and keep each other accountable. So Nick is a weightlifter. Nicholas, N-I-K-L-A-S. He's majoring at UTC in Chattanooga. He's studying right now an engineering major at UTC. My next son here has a girlfriend. We'll see how that goes. I'm praying about their future. Jared there. And then my last son, Matthew. He graduated high school last year, and now he's at Southern. And he is studying computer science. He's a sophomore there. Straight A student, very bright young boy going to Southern. That's my family. I told him he forgot to introduce somebody. Oh, me. This is my beautiful wife, Melissa. We call her Missy. And we've been married 31 years. Thanks, Darwin. And this is my deaf church. We did some renovations this past year. It's changed a little bit. You can see this new picture compared to what we have had in the past. This is how church goes. We've got Zoom Sabbath School. Deaf people from all over can comment. We come together. And this is our Zoom Sabbath School. And we really enjoy it. It's about an hour and a half, discussions and studies and comments. And you're welcome to join that Sabbath School class. Amen. And now, let me focus on deaf awareness. Okay. In the world. And they have about 2,000 students annually. And they're in the D.C. area. And they offer bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. And hearing people may think, deaf people, that bright, getting degrees like that? Yeah, absolutely. I'm here to tell you that. Bachelor's, master's, PhDs, yes. We have many deaf who have their doctorates. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Kevin? If you would repeat that. 5% of deaf people who graduate from the university in general, only 5% graduate. Oh. Kevin's saying that as far as deaf people coming into universities, only 5 actually go through the entire process and graduate degreed. 1988, this is a history point for you. This was a protest at Gallaudet University. The world was looking at Gallaudet as a stage. It gained a lot of attention on ABC News, World News Tonight. There were people there, reporters, videoing all that was going on, trying to find out what the protest was about. And as you see, it was about deaf president now. So if I may, Gallaudet University had always had hearing presidents in the past, hearing presidents each time, each session was hearing. And now, I mean, that was fine. The university was fine. It was good. But the problem was in 1988 that it was time for a new president. And at that time, the board got together and they did a search. And with those candidates, they had selected one person as the new president. You know how that process works. So they had weeded it down, and they were actually down to 2 candidates. One was a hearing person, and one was deaf. Now, if you will, the hearing person was female. That's fine. She signed nothing at all. She knew 0 sign language. The deaf, she didn't know anything about deaf culture. She didn't know anything at all. She was bright, capable. She could run a university as a president. And then the other deaf gentleman had his PhD. He was a teacher at Gallaudet. He taught psychology. Yes, he was a psych professor there on campus. And the people knew him. He signed well. He knew deaf culture. He was bright. So we have these 2 candidates together. Which do you think would be the most likely candidate to become the university president? Would you think the hearing person that knew nothing about deafness, sign language, deaf culture, or the deaf person who could communicate with the deaf students? How many would vote for that president? Yeah, exactly, the deaf gentleman, right? But as time went on, they made their announcement of the selection, and it was a woman, a female. All the students were totally thrown for that. They were like, what is wrong? This guy is fine. He's capable. He's qualified. And the board, within the board, they're like, well, he's deaf. He's not ready to function in the hearing world, you know. Oh, my goodness. The students were enraged, and they protested. And it lasted for a week. And so, do you remember that? You guys remember that? Yes. So, I mean, I was at CISA, and I was a student at that time in California, and I'd heard about it, and I agreed absolutely with the deaf students. It went on for a week, and then after that week, they realized that she, the president, was not effective, so she resigned. And that was right for her to surrender that position. And then the new person came in, and he was Dr. I. King Jordan. Hey, got the last name as I do. Huh, we're not related, but we have the same last name. He announced that the deaf can do anything except hear. Yeah, that was his message. Deaf can do anything except hear. That's it. He's right. He's right. The deaf can be presidents. And they selected him as the first deaf president at Gallaudet University. And he stayed in that position for like 20 years. So can the deaf be pastors? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at me. I'm here, right? Can deaf people be teachers? Absolutely. We've got them out there. We have deaf teachers. Can deaf people be doctors? They can. We have a few deaf physicians out there. Can deaf become dentists? Absolutely. There are a few that are out there. Can deaf become lawyers? Yes, they can be attorneys. We have deaf attorneys. They can do anything except hear, as I. King Jordan said. So please, if you would, never think of deaf people as, what do we do with them? Can they lead in a role in church? You think they could become an elder? My goodness, could they handle the responsibilities? Oh, no. Absolutely, please don't do that. Deaf people can. You can, bring them into the positions in church. Please don't think that way. Keep your minds open, as you see here, as I. King was saying. I just want to impress that on you, that you keep that and have that view of deafness and realize how God uses them individually, and they can be involved in church ministries and all. Please keep that in mind. More statistics here. 466 million people with hearing loss. And again, that's any degree of slight hearing loss, profoundly deaf, any. 70 million deaf that are deaf like myself. Wow, that's a big group. Approximately 400 different signed languages worldwide. And in the U.S., we have ASL. We're blessed to have one language, ASL, that we communicate with. California to New York, Massachusetts, we have the same language. I mean, Canada, a little different. Mostly in Canada, they use ASL. But in one local area, in Quebec, they use a different sign language called LSQ, which is Lingua Sign Quebec. And so other areas and further north, there's some indigenous sign languages that occur in different places. And I have heard there's 6 different signed languages in Canada, but again, predominantly ASL. And I've been to India 4 times so far, and I've picked up some languages there, about 25 different sign languages that I've seen in India, because they haven't traversed among themselves. They've stayed more in their smaller groups and developed their own languages. And people come in and influenced it, and there's an impact on that, but about 25 there and 400 globally. 2% of the deaf know Jesus Christ. I think more deaf would know Jesus via movies, things they could see. I think here in America are probably a little bit more familiar with Jesus Christ, but globally, no, much, much, much less knowledge. Who's telling them? Who's preaching to them? 2%. Here in the U.S., there's about 5% of churches that have deaf ministries. 95% do not have deaf ministries. Okay? We need to see that number increase. We need to get that percentage up. You may have wondered, how people become deaf. And primarily, there's 2 ways. Sensory neural deafness, and that would include aging, natural hearing loss progression, injury, like Dr. I. King Jordan that I was just referring to. He was born hearing, and he had a motorcycle accident. I think he was 22-ish, and he became deaf. He lost his hearing in both ears at that point. Excessive noise exposure, rock music, drumming, bands. A lot of people have lost hearing there. Viral infections, measles, mumps, etc. Spinal meningitis, hereditary, as I talked about earlier. And with heredity, like you're hearing people might be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh man, that genetic deafness. Oh, no, don't be that way." Many deaf people wish they had deaf parents. They wish they had a long history of genetic deafness, if you will, because they have a stronger culture, that language they could share. And sometimes, with deaf families, it's like, we're like jealous. Man, they've got that rich history. I don't have anyone. I'm the only deaf in my family. I'm here to tell you that's true. That's the deaf perspective, so be open to that. Yeah, it can be a blessing to have hereditary deafness. Second cause, conductive. Obstructions to hearing. Infections in the ear canal or middle ear. Infections that can build in there and become deaf. Perforation in the eardrum. can cause deafness. Wax buildup in the ear can prevent someone from hearing, can cause deafness. I want to speak for a minute about acceptable words. There's two, deaf and hard of hearing. We do not accept deaf and dumb, deaf mute. I mean, that word sometimes you'll see even in Ellen White's writings back in the 1800s. At that time, it was more common and acceptable. It is not today. Deaf and dumb is not, or deaf mute is not. We do not use those words today. Hearing impaired also. That tends to focus more on what's wrong with your hearing. Your hearing's impaired. You know, we're looking at my ears, right? I'm so sorry. Instead of looking at the person, don't look at my ears, look at me. I'm deaf, I'm fine. Look at me, who I am. So hearing impaired, please don't use that. That looks at the ear instead of the person. And my friend here, Terry, prefers hard of hearing. I'm deaf, and that's fine. We both accept our identity. Okay. And now I want to look at two views, hearing people's view and deaf person's views, and their different perspectives. The hearing person's view typically is pathological. The ear, right here, they're just looking at that one place, that ear. Something's wrong with that. Let's look in there. Let's see what's going on. How can I help you with your hearing? What can I do with that ear? Surgery, maybe. We can repair this. That's a very hearing perspective. Hearing aids, cochlear implants. And deaf people look at it very differently. Deaf people's view is more cultural. I'm proud of my culture. I'm proud of my language. I am independent. I'm fine. It's a very different perspective. I'm fine. I'm good. You don't have to fix us. That's the deaf and hearing view compared and contrasted here. So never think of a deaf person, oh, I'm so sorry. Can I help you? Oh, do you need to be fixed? Let the deaf be themselves. If the deaf person says, I want to have surgery, I want to have a cochlear, that's fine. Let them speak from their own self, what they want, you know, but people as deaf people don't need to be fixed. And to be honest with you, people ask me, do you wish you could hear? And I'm like, no, I really don't. I'd rather stay deaf. And they're like, why? I'm like, this is my world. This is my silent world that I know. This is the world I know, I'm familiar with. If they did fix my ear, I don't know if I'd like hearing these noises and sounds and the busyness of the world, all that's going on. Some deaf people have cochlears. Some deaf people will have a cochlear done, and then some deaf people will use it and be like, oh, I love this cochlear implant. And other deaf will be like, oh, this is not working. This is too much noise, and they take it off. So you don't know. It varies. But I know when Jesus comes, I'll hear. You know, when I get to heaven, but my life here, I'm satisfied. Other deaf may have other views, and that's okay, but that's my take. Culture, what is deaf culture? Let's look at this sentence for a minute. This lady, Dr. Carol Padden, she was deaf. Darwin, I was speaking with him a minute ago, and she was hard of hearing, identified as deaf, and she wrote a book, and Darwin was just telling me that was one of his professors that he took classes under at UT in Knoxville. Yeah, he was learning and studying there, and she was from California and had flown in to teach intensive classes there on a graduate level for 1 week. So that was interesting that we had that. No, I didn't. He's asking if I got her autograph, and I was like, no, I didn't. So deaf culture itself is a set of learned behaviors of a group of people, deaf people, who have their own language, values, rules of behavior, and traditions. So let me give you an example. In deaf culture, typically, let's say, someone might bang on something to get someone's attention. Or flip the light switch. Oh, look here, over me at that moment. It's not like no in deaf culture to bang on something. Yelling out is more hearing, right? Hollering out. But making noise to get attention is cultural. It's fine. That's one example of behavior and values and traditions. That's deaf culture. I could give you a few ideas. Language, ASL. We're using ASL. Culture. People say, are you disabled? As far as a people group, I'm like you, like a hearing person. Hearing people tend to look at deaf as disabled. And deaf people are like, no, we're a cultural people. We have our own language. Social events. Deaf people love to socialize. They've got to. I mean, the deaf people typically isolated, and when there's social things, they will come. A good example is Deaf Nation Expo. The deaf are thrilled when they're, deaf from all over come in. They set up booths. They have them there, spread out, with all kinds of things on there. And the deaf will flurry to the different booths. And we had a 380M one there that they had. And at the Deaf National Expo, they realized people are coming in. Oh, you've got gospel? It's free? Yeah, here. There's gospel stuff for you. And, pray for them. Watch this, read this. Bible study lessons through ADM. I mean, that's an opportunity that's being afforded now. Deaf love that socialization. And our church, next week on Sunday, we're going to have a Thanksgiving dinner, and it's free. And I've asked friends in the community to come, and, the meal's been being provided for free. And so they'll hang out and socialize on Sunday, the 17th. Deaf and hard of hearing, you're welcome to come to our church. Doorway conversations. I was talking to you a minute ago, this morning actually, about how we do the deaf two-step going out to the lobby. We're talking, and then we're the last to be there. And then Claudette a little while ago was like, come on, it's lunchtime, it's time to eat, come on. We're like, okay. And she was like, come on. And we just kept talking to that last minute, and then we arrived over there to eat. It's just deaf culture. We take longer time to get to another place, like leaving church. And another one I know, like growing up, my mom would be like trying to get me, and I'm like over here, over there. No, that's not. Oh, pointing. I'd be pointing. My mom was like, don't point. She'd be telling me no, and I'm like, hearing people don't point. But in the deaf world, I'm like, oh, you see that man over there, got the tie, that shirt right there? You see him? Look over there. Yeah. We point, and in our language, in our culture, it's okay. Hearing people, no, don't point. So very much opposite. Talking with one's mouth full, you don't do that, right? You have to wait till you swallow. There's nothing in there. In deaf world, we're talking away. We're chomping out there, having a good time talking, right? That's how we do it, right? We take advantage of that we can eat and talk at the same time. If you know sign language, that's great. You can do it. Blunt. Very blunt comments. Hearing people tend to be more like dancing around, trying to say it in a nice way. I don't want to offend anybody. I want to say this. They go all around the point instead of just saying it. Deaf people typically just boom, we just say it. We just say it very straight up. And it might hurt somebody's feelings. Like, for example, like a person you haven't seen in a long time. It's been years, and they come up to you, and a deaf person, oh, wow, you've gained weight. You're so heavy. Oh, man, you look big, And we've gained a lot of weight. And we just say that. Hearing people, oh, you don't want to say that. You don't want to say they're heavy. You dance around the point. Oh, you look different, or you look good. But they don't get to the point, right? And deaf people just say, oh, you're looking fat. Not fat, chunky, big, whatever. They're just telling you how it appears to them. So the banging on the table, the flipping of the light switch, getting that attention, making noise, right? That's part of our culture. Deaf jokes. I've got a few. I'll tell you them later. Okay. Jokes tend to typically be visual. Hearing jokes tend to rely on sound. And many times hearing people are laughing away, I'm like, what? What are they saying? And they tell me, I'm like, yeah, that's not funny to me. Because it depends on sound and words. I'm like, oh, okay, well, it's not funny to me. That's the way it typically goes. Okay. 90%, many children are deaf, are born to hearing families, just like mine. Your parents hearing, your parents hearing. Yeah, all of us, okay? Hearing, 90%. 10% have deaf parents. Hearing parents with deaf children, the communication is typically limited because they don't know sign language. And they're trying to communicate, and there isn't real communication. A lot of my friends, often, very common issue, not really any real communication. The relationships tend to be poor. I encourage you, if you have deaf children, to learn their language, get involved in their world, have strong relationships and communication. It's important. Hearing people they have that bond, but deaf with hearing, they typically miss one another, and it's a very surface dynamic. Nothing in depth. It's very sad. If you have deaf children, please, 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 please learn sign language. Please do it. Learning one's language is vital to have access to communication. Deaf communication breakdowns surface. Many times, my friends that are deaf, Thanksgiving, they get with their family, and it's like, why? Well, they're just talking to each other, and I'm being left out. I'm eating, and they're talking to one another. So the deaf person just sitting there lonely and eating. I'd rather be with the deaf group or school for the deaf or stay with my friends. I'd rather have fun talking to people, bonding with people that are the same. And I'm just letting you know that's real, very real. ASL is the most used language visually, okay? You hear what I'm saying here? Understand what I'm saying? Hearing people typically are like, oh, they're deaf. Hold on one moment here. Let me give you this book, right? You read this book, and you'll be good, okay? Okay. And they take that book, and they're like, ugh. And the reason why is that for many deaf, reading is a struggle. They read typically on about a 3rd or 4th grade level. Many deaf, it's difficult for them to read. And so, I don't know about you, but with a deaf person, I don't know how to sign to them. I'll give them a book, and the Lord will take care of it. No. Deaf people need signed communication. They can watch that. They may not understand what's being said, but when you sign it, they're like, oh. And they're flipping through the pages, and you sign it, they're like, oh, I understand. Because that's in their language, their first language, sign language, not English. If you give them a book and ask them to read, it's not going to work, generally. Yeah. 3rd or 4th grade level. I mean, it's true. I mean, I don't want to go too deep here, but for you to get the idea, deaf children don't grow up hearing any language. Hearing children grow up hearing language. People are talking. Their mind is being patterned in that spoken language, and they follow that language, and they gain intelligence. deaf people aren't getting that incidental learning. They're not hearing it. And then later, a book, trying to read at that point, it's too late. Signing with them when they're young, that's the key. And they'll be very intelligent and have a language base. But many educational systems are, with the deaf person, we'll deal with that later. And then they get older and it's too late. And then their reading and their writing of English is not good. And that language base is too late. That's an educational thing. We'll set that aside. But I did want to touch on that. Tips. Ellen White wrote this. Tips for reaching the deaf. Ellen White wrote this in Ministry of Healing, 143. I like this. Several good points in here are the same as how to reach the deaf for Jesus. First, if you are motivated, seriously motivated, and want to have deaf in your ministry, if you make that decision, then you have to be friends first with the deaf. Talk with them, befriend them, show them your interest, dialogue, meet needs, help them. They might need a job, something they're working on. Oh, might need a job. Help them find that job. Deaf people be like, oh, wow, thank you. You're interested in me. You care about me as a person. And you develop that confidence and that trust and that relationship. And then maybe your church is having an event or something. Like my church is having this Thanksgiving dinner upcoming. Hey, you want to come to church? Got free Thanksgiving dinner. Definitely. Oh, okay. You have to develop those relationships. Get to know one another. And then, okay, they'll come to your church and enjoy that. Sure, we'll go. Keep your mind open to doing that kind of thing. Then maybe say, oh, you want to come for worship? Yeah, I wouldn't mind checking that out. And then that builds. But that key is developing that relationship first. Please do not think, oh, we'll get a church interpreter and everything will be perfect. And we'll make this advertisement for everyone to come. We've got the interpreter in the deaf. I don't know who that person is. And they'll throw that in the trash. But if no one shows, like, what's wrong? What's wrong? Do you know who that one person was? No, I don't know. I didn't know either. You haven't had a relationship built yet. You haven't established that. You don't have the trust. You have to have all that first. Then they'll come. That's key. That's key. So I encourage you, if you have a deaf person, you meet them, be their friend. Learn some sign. Teach me sign. I'll learn from you. Sure, they'll be glad to. Some deaf people like, okay, sure. Meet at the library. Sit down. Talk to one another. They'll help you A, B, C, whatever. You go to an ASL class locally and learn about the culture and deaf events. You go to their events. You socialize with them and develop those relationships. Church, okay, great. Yeah, we know each other. Great. Yeah, I'll go to your church. You come to mine. That's how it works. Those are tips. And that's a good quote. That's effective. Keep that in the back of your mind when you're dealing with the deaf community. I want to throw that out. As far as what you do and what you can do as a church, like today, I came in, I felt warm. People came up to me. It was nice. Thank you. Good job, Claudette. Thanks. Your church members did a good job. Yeah. Deaf people want to know you care. If you're cold to them and snooty to them, oh, I'm here. They'll feel that. They will sense that. They want me here. Great. Thank you. Yeah. Good church. You passed the test today. Okay. Good job. Yeah. It's important. If I come in and they're cold, they don't care about me, I'm not going back. And that's a missed opportunity, right? Adventist Possibilities Ministry has a motto, All are gifted, needed, and treasured. APM, you may be wondering, that's under the Adventist Church. There's 7 different ministries, and one of them is for deaf, blind, that kind of thing. But the deaf one itself, hearing churches have to value them, treasure them, bond with them. Churches should never have a hearing group that's, oh, they're deaf. Oh, look at that. What are we going to do with them? They're deaf. Oh, my word. Oh, how do we handle that? Right? I mean, no, if you're not interested, well, we don't know what to do. Deaf people be like, oh, okay, that's a church, huh? And you don't want me in it. You don't give a rip about me, huh? And they'll walk away. We don't want to do that. That motto is welcoming, right? All are gifted, needed, and treasured. And the church should represent that, right? Okay, so if you have a deaf person there, here's a couple more tips. Use pictures, okay? Graphics, illustrations. Deaf people are strong visual learners, right? Like this Bible here, right? This is good. This is good. It's got pictures. The words, not so much, but the pictures, oh. And as they flip through and see the pictures, it's so helpful. Use graphs, use pictures, not a lot of words. The pictures. My sermon, every Sabbath. I'll have a verse, but I've got a picture constantly, every slide, right? Always together. And sometimes the verse might be longer, and then I still fit in the pictures, though. Videos, whatever you're using like that, use the captioning. Sometimes it doesn't have in it. Interpreters have to sit there and try to interpret that kind of thing. It can be a challenge. Try to look back and interpret that and who said what with all of the, drama and movement that's going on. The interpreter trying to assume those different positions and postures of the different people, much is missed. If the captioning is there, they can see the movement on the screen and have the captioning. Some deaf will still prefer the interpreter, and it's going to vary, and it's going to vary on language level also. Music and drama in ASL. Music and sign, if it's signed in English, and the word order is just, it's not the same as ASL, right? So we have to, when we hear the word, have to understand the meaning of that word, and then get the sign that it fits with that appropriate meaning. Yeah, we can talk about music at another time, but I'm just letting you know to be aware. Deaf people would rather a song fit with the meaning instead of a song fit with the words. With the words we're looking at, we're going, those English words don't make sense. But when they're signed and it's been changed into ASL, we're like, oh, I get it. You can start with a few hearing members who have the motivation and the heart, and they want to minister to the deaf and learn their language. You can start with that, with their culture. And the deaf, oh, got some friends there. Who signed? Okay, cool. And they'll go to your church. Just like with missionaries, many missionaries will be called to another country. They got to learn about that culture, learn their language, practice that, study that, prepare that. It might take a year or so to get ready. And once they've got all those credentials in place, then they can share the gospel as missionaries. It's the same thing working with the deaf world. You saw today, obviously, we had deaf people seated at the front so they could see the interpreter. Darwin was seated here or standing, in the front. And then Amy was there, and we're on the mic, and when Darwin was voicing, and we could look back and forth. So never, never, never have the interpreter back there. Yeah, and the deaf group back there. Never. In the front. Either side. Piano kind of gets in the way, So over here, whichever side, but they're going to come together where the interpreter is and where there's space for the interpreter to interpret. If you have a group Sabbath school discussions, if you're seated more in a horseshoe, or you're across from one another, so you can see each other, not seated right beside one another, but seated across so you can see one another dialogue. Ideally, if you have a few deaf and the Sabbath school come together like in a group, because like the talking will be going on, the deaf are like, who said what? Wait, I missed that. I'm looking here. Interpreter's trying to interpret. It's a lot to follow, and we get lost. So keep that in mind. It's better if we're in a group of our own for Sabbath school, a deaf group. This one verse, I want you to remember, the third angel's message. And I saw another angel flying through the sky, carrying the eternal good news to proclaim to the people who belong to this world, to every nation and tribe and language and people. Remember, we talked about that word, language. Never think of it as just spoken language. Language includes sign language, right? It's a language. The gospel must reach deaf people in their language, am I right? That's how it's going to work. It's not a hearing thing for hearing people. Oh, oops, forgot about the deaf. They're people too. The gospel has to go to deaf people. They're a language group. They're people with a language and culture. As far as like resources and learning more and all that, we've got several, and I'll share some with you. Adventist Learning Community. These are free resources. And it's under APM, Adventist Possibilities Ministries. And if you click and you go in and take a course, they'll have deaf ministry there. And when you click on that, you can learn. And you can earn CEUs. Some of you have to have CEUs. Getting those points for your ongoing education. There's educational courses there. Adventist Learning Community. Type that in. Go in to APM. Click there, and you'll see a host of information there that you can glean from. Sure, go right ahead. I'll wait. Okay. This is my church, Southern Deaf Fellowship. I have a live stream. It is live streamed every Sabbath. If Elder JC comes, she's hearing, she signs for us. She has a deaf sister who passed away, but she comes on days for my church, and sometimes we'll share. So we have live streaming here. And you can see that 1 hour service, same time as your church here, 11:30, exact same time for start. The sermons are archived. You can see that. There's a whole slew of them, videoed sermons from our church through the years. This is my wife, Every Word ASL. And then this website's starting to look old. I agree. My deaf elder, Mario from Florida, designed it. He's the master. He died, I think it was a year back now. He was sick 2 years ago. And so now he's gone. And this is how we have it. I haven't found anyone yet to take over that work. I'm hoping, pray for us, that our church will find the right person to take that over and do some new designing and work with that. It is a little dated. I do apologize. Be patient with me regarding that. GCC, Georgia Cumberland Conference, Disabilities Ministries. So Disabilities Ministries focuses in on blind, folks in a wheelchair. Deaf are separate. They have deaf ministries. And If you need like how to work with blind people or those who are in a wheelchair, that would be Disabilities Ministries under Georgia Cumberland Conference. At the NAD level, we have Deaf Ministries there, and you can click on that. This is Esther Doss. She is a CODA, just like Amy, CODA, and she's a leader for NAD, the NAD representative. Adventist Possibilities Ministries. There's a bunch of information there too, for blind people, people in a wheelchair, and how to work with them again. And if you click under that, you'll see deaf under ADMI. Adventist Deaf Ministries International. Again, this is old. Amanda was our GC website person at that time, and then ADM stole you. They stole you. And this has been left this way, so we're looking for a new individual to find, and I'm hoping the GC will tell us who. They haven't announced it yet, but hopefully we'll get that worked on. This was 2 years ago in St. Louis with the GC meeting, so it's been a bit. Hope Channel for the deaf. This too needs to be updated. 380M stole it. What's wrong with you guys still? Quit all that stealing, right? So this has been left there for a while. We need a new master for that to upgrade this. But 380M, our folks here, woohoo! Resources, study materials, literature, they have all that here. 380M information. It's easy reading materials for the deaf, like I talked about them, often being a 3rd grade or 4th grade level, and they won't understand a lot of materials, so these are being provided with pictures and in a way that they can understand the wording more. A logo here for ADMI, Adventist Deaf Ministries, the Bible, the cross, see there, and the hands coming out from the Bible, like signing, right? You can tell that's deaf. And a deaf person from Brazil actually came up with that. They illustrated that, and the GC liked that. And they're like, oh, can we use that? And they're like, sure. So that's what we're using worldwide. Adventist Possibilities Ministries, the logo here, the church, and then we see the cross, and we see the puzzle pieces representing you as hearing people coming to the church. And the church without the deaf, without the blind, without those in the wheelchair, them being shunned, does the church run well that way? No. See, the blue represents the deaf or the blind or those in wheelchairs as a group, and your church needs that puzzle piece, right? We all fit together as a whole piece in the house of God, worshiping, right? Resources, Deaf Church, GCC, North American Division, GC, and 3ADM. Feel free to take pictures of that if you want, those resources. Okay, there we go. I know that's a lot of information thrown at you. You may feel a little bit overwhelmed. That's all right. I just tried to do a cursory intro on some of this. You know, you may think there's not a lot going on with deaf ministries, but there are many things happening. We have a major in deaf studies at a few universities offering 4-year degrees if you're interested in doing that. Learning sign, deaf culture, deaf history, deaf education. More and more of that is out there. You can absorb that if you want. Interpreters, more and more programs. UT in Knoxville They offer interpreter training. Maryville College does. Southern doesn't. We do offer ASL 1, 2, 3, and 4. Darwin and I both have taught there as adjunct professors. TTU, Tennessee Tech, there in Cookville, offers sign language, not a major, but sign language classes. Not yet classes. Their classes are developing that. It's not that far of a drive here from you in Crossville. And there's a deaf professor. His name is Brett Koch, K-O-C-H. Really great person. He's teaching ASL there. Tennessee Technical University there in Cookville, Tennessee Tech University, TTU, at the university there that's close to you, yes. Yes, TTU. Yeah, you can look online for local. There may be some free classes too. ASL app, you can learn on your own. That's another option for you to do some self-study. The main thing is get involved with the deaf community. When there's deaf events, go meet people, mingle with them. I encourage my students, Darwin and I encourage our students when we're teaching ASL, when they're taking the class, they're required to get out there at least 5 hours, meeting and mingling with the deaf, being involved in events. Deaf church can be one, different events they can go to. And they have to write reports and give it to us. That's a requirement for our students, those 5 hours. So yeah, they have to be in the community. Yes.
Take your mic.
So, say that again, or coming on up if you would, Kevin. So, cultural information there. One thing I think was missing is deaf people tend to be physical people, touching people, right? Hearing people tend to be sensitive that, oh, why did you touch me? What's going on? Why did you touch me? Deaf people, we may touch someone and move them away when we're engaging in conversation, when we're going through, right? When we're speaking, we can't always say, excuse me, you know? So like 2 weeks ago at Washington State, I think it was like 50% of the deaf people were like slept in a hotel because there was a deaf expo that weekend. And so then one man at the front desk noticed this woman, and she came around and she was talking. This other person who was deaf was like talking. They were like waving. The guy was like, she is blind. She has tunnel vision, you know, so she can't respond as well. You have to tap her. And in deaf culture, it's okay to touch someone, right? And that person's like, and how to do that. And it's like, oh, okay, good, thank you, you know, and they got their bag and stuff. So it's all fine, it's all good, but we touch in deaf culture. That's part of our culture. And also, too, deaf-blind, there's many deaf-blind out there, and they do require tactile sign language. So, of course, you have to touch when we're doing tactile. In Germany last week when I was there's one deaf-blind man using tactile German sign language. And, you know, he'd raise his hand and come up front and sign. I mean, very responsive, very intelligent, and was following what was going on and what was being dialogued about. You might have deaf-blind people here in your church. I think we're ready for questions. If you don't mind making yourself available, could be any of us, deaf or hard of hearing, that are here, feel free to ask. Let me take this down.
Anyone?
Hold on.
No. Thank you.
Right. They're trying to figure out how to seat, to do it like in a group, but with the way that the church is structured with the pews, it's not as easy. But going back to that visual space that we're talking about. Do we have several chairs that maybe we could set up front?
Well,
a few
I figured
chairs.
that they would just ask the question from the back.
Right, but Well, it's
To,
there for them to all see.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bobby? I think it's great.
Thank you. And could I have one chair here? Thank you very much. Thank you. And there's no dumb questions like, how do deaf people wake up? Alarm clocks, whatever response to like a baby or what we need to do. We can answer those things, okay? So anything you have, any questions like that. Deaf people have special alarm clocks. We have vibrating beds. We have things that we connect with lights so they will flash and we'll see that to wake us up. So, and for baby crying, we have a special device too that we could plug in and have that alarm clock. So those alarming systems that are visual lights or vibrating the bed or those kind of lights that are in other rooms, also we have those things. And back in the day, we tended to put like a baby maybe with the parents, right? And the parents could feel the baby crying. So they could, because deaf people have an increased sense of recognizing movement and that kind of thing. So, yeah. So those are some things about waking up and that type of thing. And our cat, okay. Sometimes our cat, too, will climb on us and let us know, like when the baby's crying or stuff like interesting. Different things that go on, like that cat would let us know, and we would just follow their lead. And with technology today, my phone, I've got alarms set on it. It vibrates, and I feel it. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I need to get up early. I got a flight. Got to get up at 3. Got to get up at 4. I don't trust myself. I might sleep late. My alarm, though, every time I wake up before that alarm goes off. So surprisingly, it's there, ready to vibrate, but so far it's worked. You never know, but I have it with me. It's set right there. So if it vibrates, I'll feel it and wake on up. Same thing, too, like with the door bells. Like we have flashing lights and stuff like that in our house set up for that kind of thing. And the sensitivity to the crying, the bed, the movement, all those things, yes.
This question is for Terry.
Go ahead.
Terry works at Publix. He works at Publix,
Okay.
and he's so good at his job, you wouldn't know that he's deaf. I went to ask him something one day, and when he told me to write it down, I caught it. So,
Yes. Yeah. It depends on people, the customers. It's a challenge with different ones. It depends on them, their voice, whether it's low, medium, loud, whether they speak fast. If I don't understand them clearly, write it down or show me on your phone, or a shopping app, or please tell me one more time. That can be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
And
I was just going to say, ask him, how does he deal with people that are rude to him? when they don't know that he's deaf, and he's trying to tell them to write it down.
If they're rude, I try to get my other coworker to maybe come up and see what they need. I'm not trying to be rude or ignore them. I'm wanting to help them clearly understand what they're wanting. And they may think I'm rude, and I'm not meaning to be. And so they will realize, oh, the coworkers do that I'm deaf, so that does happen.
Because sometimes he wears a mask that says, I'm deaf. But other than that, you don't even know, because that's how proficient he is in his job.
Some people see me, I have the mask with the word deaf. It says I'm deaf on it, but that way they know I'm not ignoring them. It depends. People who will see that and read that, some people can't read or they just ignore it, so that can be tough. Also, I know like one deaf lady who works at Publix also in Florida, in Orlando, and she's deaf, and she wears a badge, and it says, I am deaf. And she works as a cashier, and people come through her line, and sometimes when hearing people try to talk to her, she'll just point to her badge, and they're like, oh, okay. I have one, Terry says. I got a name tag, and it says hard of hearing on there. It's got my name, and it says I'm hard of hearing, so people can read that for clarity.
Yeah. Several different ways you can communicate with deaf people. We often use, like at different doctor's appointment, is voice-to-text apps. But sometimes it requires really good Wi-Fi, and it's better than writing because a person can just speak. Now I'm going to ask you, do you know how deaf people can talk on the phone? Do you know how we do that? Do you know how we make calls? There is a special phone called VP, or video phones. It goes through a relay service. When I call them, it goes through an interpreting service, and then it connects with a hearing person on the other end. And it will work just like a regular phone call and conversation. Sometimes it's a little bit of a delay because it's going through a relay service, but that's what we use.
Ask them if they can share any situation where they go to like a restaurant or something and they're trying to order, and the person is not patient to try to understand what they're saying.
Point at the menu. Point at the menu. Yeah, point.
Or just
point.
text out your order, or just text it out your order and write it down on a little device or a notepad or something like that, or just point to it.
Yeah, just hold it up.
So you say that you, at most, that have a third, fourth grade reading level. How do they read contracts, like for owning a house, or even getting loans, or things like that? How can hearing people help to facilitate that, to make it doable for them?
It's most scary for deaf people to put trust into someone to help them to understand signing off on something, on an agreement, because many deaf people don't know what they're doing. They're depending and trusting on someone when they go ahead and sign off on something. That's why many deaf people have trust issues with hearing people, because of fear of, being taken advantage of. She says, yes, being taken advantage of, fooled by hearing people. And Jeff says, in Tennessee, there's 6 service centers for the deaf throughout the state. Chattanooga's 1, Knoxville's 1, Nashville, Johnson City, Jackson, and Memphis. There's 6 throughout the state, and they provide interpreting services like you're talking about for deaf people. So an interpreter would go like They would be contacted to like Partnership, for example, in Chattanooga, and the interpreter could go, and as someone is reading that contract, they could sign in sign language, interpret it, have that dialogue, and make sure that the understanding occurs. And so deaf people use those service centers as resources for that. Like, that's correct. That is correct. He's asking me. Yeah, Darwin does that kind of work.
Yeah, oftentimes the deaf person would call us saying, I don't understand this. And then we help read it and then sign it to them and explain it. Any more questions?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so my question would be about deaf ministry, and you're suggesting to get involved in the community. I've lived here for 20 plus years. I don't think I've met one deaf person or seen any activities in our community. How should I even know what's happening here?
The challenge is knowing the events out there and looking online and finding some events within the state and finding somewhere locally sometimes, like at a coffee house event or a restaurant, or depending on different events that deaf people are doing, like a deaf expo, or where they might meet and go and be together as deaf people. Do you mind interpreting for a minute? Do you mind if I answer that? Do you mind if I answer? I brought some resources about. So I'd like to say there's, like he said, there's 6 service centers, and I brought some resources from the service center in Chattanooga in regard to your question. And so they have events there every month, getting together for breakfast that Jeff goes to and different things like that. Knoxville, there's a center there. Nashville, there's a center there. I'm going to email to Dr. Barrett the contact information for the 3 centers, and that way you could contact them, reach out, and find out what events that they have. At Partnership, Matt Calkins, Calkins, is in charge of their events, and if you reach out to them, he'll email you a newsletter on a monthly basis so you can know the things they're doing in the greater Chattanooga area. And then you also can reach out to Knoxville and Nashville and see what they have. Because it seems like Knoxville's a bit closer to you guys, but I'm more familiar with the Chattanooga area. But I have some resources out there for the center in Chattanooga, and I'll give the other information to Dr. Barrett.
Terry, I'm gonna have him tell you what they do. I think it's once a month. It's called Sip and Sign. It's in Cookville. So it may be something you want to go and do. So he can tell you. I put Terry on the spot.
When I was in Florida for many years, they had many things there. When I moved here, not so much. There's been very few deaf people at deaf events. But you said Sip and Sign?
Okay.
Okay, sorry, got it.
I'm sorry.
My bad, I'm sorry. A little confused there. My bad. When I was in Florida, then I moved up here. I ended up meeting an interpreter here at church. And the first time I visited, the people looked at me and I had an interpreter, but I just kind of ignored the people as they were looking at me. I wasn't afraid because I needed to have an interpreter. And so when the pastor's sharing God's word, I needed to know. And then a few months later, people in my church asked me to interpret. They wanted to learn ASL they wanted to learn sign language.
But I have no idea.
But I had no idea.
So my student asked
So my interpreter asked
have college,
if they had a college,
Tennessee,
like we were talking about Tennessee Tech,
to have a class.
they have classes there, but people from my church didn't feel comfortable. They wanted something easier, slowed down a bit, or less cost, depending on what those people could afford and what they wanted. So my interpreter and my pastor, they discussed in a private room what to do, and they made the decision that they would offer for people in my church learning ASL in classes for free for 4 weeks.
So when people sign up,
So when the people signed up, we had almost 75 people sign up for the class at my church. So we had 7 teachers teaching. And then 4 weeks later, they were done and people wanted to learn more ASL. They want to have ASL part 2. And then a few years later, my interpreter and my pastor decided, why not go ahead with the new name of Sip and Sign, so they could learn more and meet. Deaf and hearing could come together and meet on a monthly basis. And that's how it grew.
Yeah, so they get together. What's the name of the place where they get together?
It's from my church.
It's from my church.
The one that my wife comes to.
It's a Crossville at the place.
It's Cookville.
Meat.
Something Bean.
Something Bean is what he's saying too. It's in Cookville.
It's a coffee.
Exceptional Bean.
It's for coffee.
It's a coffee place. It's a coffee place. It's a coffee house. We meet there and we chat and we sign.
It's the first Tuesday of the month.
Yeah, he's signing it.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Sometimes we change
Sometimes we change it. Like, let's say, for example,
Like Thursday.
like Thursday's Thanksgiving, okay? What we do in a situation like that. So sometimes we'll make a change, but mostly it is on Tuesday. But like it could be Christmas Day on a Tuesday, then we're gonna have to move the date sometimes, but most of the time it is on a Tuesday.
There's a man up there raising his hand. Yeah, go ahead.
This is not a major question, it's a simple one. What do you do about alarm clocks in the morning?
We already answered that question.
That was answered. Yeah, let's ask it.
That's fine, it's fine, it's fine. We have a special alarm clock that can vibrate on our beds. And we can have the option to connect it with the light and it will flash. And also for hard of hearing people, we have a very, very loud noise alarm. And many people, hearing people, use that because they have really deep sleep. So they use that to wake them up. It's called Sonic Boom? Yeah, Sonic Boom. It's the type of alarm clock.
Another research center that I found is Nashville Bridge for the Deaf. And they do monthly programs there for the deaf. It seems very exciting, and they're very helpful with what's happening out here in the deaf community. It's called Nashville Bridge for the Deaf.
Yes. Back here?
Hi. What do you suggest for people that want to get involved but are extremely shy when it comes to remembering signs and just trying to start all over again? Because I learned a long time ago, but I'm very afraid. What's your suggestion?
Just be a friend, make them feel involved, included. Don't feel like a stranger. Engage yourself, write with them, or use voice-to-text app. Talk to them and let them read that as it's printed out. Especially with the church, don't feel like unwelcome, like we were talking about earlier. Have them over to your home maybe instead of the church. Be a friend, give a meal. That goes a long way. Also, my classes, like for ASL 1, when they're learning, they come to my deaf church, and they're like a little apprehensive, and they realize that there's many deaf people there that are friendly, they're very patient with them. If their signs aren't that good, that's fine. They meet them where they are, and they're like, oh, I feel good about that. So do that, mingle like she's saying, meet people. Deaf people are not like looking at you and judging and laughing at your signs. They're happy that you're giving it an effort. You're trying, right?
Yeah. I could also add that you can learn a few basic signs like good morning, I'm really happy you're here, Jesus loves you. These small, simple phrases can make the deaf person feel really touched and shows that you are putting an effort and you really care about them. Deaf people do not bite. Do not be afraid. They're not going to go, "Grr, I'm going to eat you." Or, "You kidding me? You did what? No, wrong side. Okay, you're terrible. Come, you've been practicing for 1 week? That's shut. No. They're not. They're not going to bite. They're going, "Oh, you've been practicing for 1 week? Good job. Keep going. This is how you do it properly. They're not going to bite you. Don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid."
Yes, her mom says yes.
One thing I can tell you, my wife and I, we've been dealing with the deaf for like 28 years with our ministry. And we used to have events like Christmas in July, Thanksgiving dinners. We did socials and different things. And they're just like anybody else. They like to have fun. I'm the fun guy. So one night we were at the office and think we had just finished a Thanksgiving dinner. And my wife said, "What are you going to do now?" I said, "We're going to play some games." So I taught them this game. I taught them musical chairs. I taught the deaf musical chairs. Yeah, we had a great time. We had a great time. And then we did a game called Treasure Hunt, where you have 2 teams, 2 captains, and 2 runners. And when I call out an object, they have to find it and take off running to the table. We played that game up to 2 o'clock in the morning. They was hanging out at our office. So having fun, it's just like us. They just hang out and do stuff. But the one thing they don't see, the deaf community does not see color at all. They are all one family.
That's true. Deaf says that is true.
One whole family. And we couldn't believe it when we had our first event, the different variety, the diversity that we saw coming in the door and how all of them are friends. And when you want news to travel, there's a certain 1, a certain 2, you tell them we having something and it will flow. You don't have to advertise. They will flow that information. And people think that texting is something new. That's how they used to communicate way back. And we just got into texting when they used to have those little sidekicks, little phones would just pop it up. That's how they communicated. And we saw one of the deaf girls in our ministry with it, and we were like, that was before texting. Well, what is that? You mean back in the Nextel, click, click, and you talk on the Nextel like a radio? Oh, texting back then. So there's things they do that we just picking up on. They've been doing that forever. So just, and let me say, my wife don't even know about this. No, this is a good thing. We're going to have our first deaf hangout on our property. I'm going to call it Silent Fun Day. How about that? And they can play all my crazy games that I have. It's going to be a blast. But if you ever hear about a Deaf Expo, you got to go to Deaf Expo. It's amazing to see business in that room, in that auditorium, are run by deaf people, owned by deaf people. All you hear is hands moving and laughter. You don't hear anything else throughout that auditorium. It was phenomenal.
I work with a lot of elderlies, and when you brought this to my awareness, the pastor did this morning, the first thing came to me was, how is the speaking community responding to the deaf elderlies, like even in the nursing homes? I can imagine they're very lonely.
Yes. Yes. I know they have nursing homes for the deaf. I know Massachusetts has one.
Yes,
Yeah,
the
New England.
New England Home for the Deaf.
I know that place they have where deaf go, and all communication is accessible there. But as far as that nursing home, in loneliness with that and visiting them, they'd be very thrilled and open to communication and those kind of things. If people aren't visiting them, they'd be thrilled to have someone to chat with them if they're deaf. Even if, like for us, in our home all the time, I mean, like, we get lonely. We have to go out. We have to find people to
I
talk
want
to.
to add, if you have a DVD player, we have copies of the sermons on DVD that we mail out, and we can give it to you, and they love watching them. They love watching the sign language sermons. If you want that, please contact us. We have monthly DVD mailing list. Some deaf people have no internet access, so we mail it out to them every single month, and they can learn God's word through sign language.
Sorry?
I can get the information.
Yes. We have a contact card that you can contact 3 Angels Deaf Ministry. We also have our website. You can contact us there. We also have business cards as well. I can go get the business cards if you want to hand them out.
Well, as we're winding down, I want to,
We've got 3 minutes left, Jeff
Right.
says.
as we're winding down, I find that I've had an intriguing day. But more than anything, I'm sorry, I would like for you to speak to this young lady. Is she phenomenal or what? I can't hear you. Isn't she something? Yes, she is. So I want you, in this last few minutes, to explain to us, what does it feel like to be a coder?
And say what a coder is.
Okay, sorry, coder. Yes, right here.
Okay. So for all of you who don't know, okay, I shall sit down. I'm not old yet, but okay. So a coda is a child of deaf adults. So I was born and raised a hearing person. Thank you. a hearing person in a family with both my parents were deaf. I immensely enjoyed it because it exposed me to two worlds, the hearing world and the deaf world. Each one has its own cultures, and I've adapted a little bit of both. I have scared more hearing people than I want to admit. I've given several of them mini heart attacks. One of the best stories I remember is I was tapping a man to get his attention. The poor thing looked like he had a heart attack. He jumped so far out of his chair. I felt so sorry. That's when before I realized it's not customary to tap people. But many people don't think of deaf people in their culture. They think of the hearing world and how they can match it with the deaf culture. And for me, I've always been in the middle of both. I know the hearing world, I know what's polite, mostly what's polite, and then the deaf world, where I know what's polite and what's rude. And to combine them both, it can be a little bit of a challenge, especially if I'm in a room with both hearing and deaf people. I tap, and I go, don't tap that person, do not touch that person, do not touch, don't you dare, do not resist it. Keep talking until they look at you, just keep talking. Oh my goodness, that is the most annoyingest part. But I really enjoy being a CODA because I'm thankful that I can be exposed to a world. Even though I might not 100% understand what they're like, what they're going through, but I get to be a part of it. I get to be involved, I get to learn, I get to mingle with deaf people. I rather sign than speak sometimes. Speaking, I had to put a lot of tone. Oh man, I have to keep putting tone after tone. Facial expression, oh that's easy. I haven't called a drama queen too many times. Easy? But I wouldn't trade it for the world. If I could become like one of you guys, maybe, but I love my life. I love what I get to be raised with. I love the experience. I love meeting new people. Like today, I've met so many of you, and I want to get to know you better.
We'll have the cards available afterwards. We're going to go ahead and close out the Sabbath. Did you enjoy that? Wasn't that awesome? My goodness, yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
You need
Yes, I want to know. I've known Sister Claudette for many years, and I never heard what made you so interested in the deaf world.
Okay, real quick. Thanks for asking. I have not a clue.
So you don't want to take Spanish?
What happened, I didn't want to learn Spanish, and I determined, but I had to have the language to graduate college. So I went ahead and took sign language, and the first year I had a professor that was hearing that, and I failed the class immediately because of lack of expression. I signed perfectly, but my expression was not in place. And after that, I thought, you know what? I'm going to do it with only deaf professors. And so for the next years, all I had were deaf professors. And that really helped me to strengthen my skill. I didn't have any deaf people in my life, in my world, nothing. So that's how I got into it. How I got into speaking hands, God. After going through Hurricane Andrew and losing everything, becoming homeless, you know, you go from having a lot of money to having nothing. Losing the house, losing all my cars, it was humiliating. And I remember one day sitting there wanting to die. I was finished with this world. And the Lord kind of spoke to me, and I got very angry with him. I remember that. And then he told me everything's going to be okay. He brought me through the hardest thing I could have ever lived through. Homelessness is not easy. I had gone 10 days without showering or anything, and it was humiliating. When I when I finally came out of it and saw God's hand, I remember I just needed to hear a word from God, and I wasn't a Christian. I just needed to hear from God. And in hearing him, just what he did with us, taking care of us, getting us off the streets into a new home, I was so grateful to him that I told him whatever I needed to do, I was going to do it for him. I took off the jewelry, I took off the makeup, I walked away from my profession, which we can talk about later, but I walked away from anything that was worldly. And literally, I got baptized the January, so that's 1993, I got baptized, my way of just telling him thank you for what he did. And then after that, about 94, he gave me speaking hands, literally. I had no concept. And I've just watched the miracles he's worked with me. My passion for the deaf that you see is literally from God. I have no one in my world. Now I do. I have a mega deaf family, and I'm just thankful for that. But that's how I got it. Okay.
Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you guys for your eagerness, your passion to learn more about the deaf ministry. We need your prayers, and we need your support and your friendship.
And involvement.
And we want to say thank you. We really do. We want to say thank you for your heart and what is important. Thank you.
And then I have to say thank you for my panel. Amazing. Everyone came together. We ran after Jeff forever, so thank you for finally being able to come, opening up your schedule. Terry, you've been a joy. You've just been a joy. And for the Colgans, oh my goodness, I've enjoyed you tremendously. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come all the way here. And we've been blessed. Believe me, we've been blessed. Jason, I have not met you, but how awesome it is. And Mike, I can't thank you enough for coming. We've all had questions, and here you are, giving us the answers we need. We thank you, and we thank God for you.
Real quick, if anybody, and I think somebody here, I think you guys are into whitewater rafting.
Well, I like it.
This is the man right here. This guy right here.
Yeah, love it. Love it. They can come with you every year. Yeah, I do it every year. Yeah, go there. Yeah, let's do it. All right, I'll go. All right.
The one that takes you down and throws you. That's all the class I need to know.
Good one.
Good question.
I see 8 people.
I think it's less than 8 people that we have. 8 or less when we're rafting.
Captain,
One crew captain who's managing everything and responsible for everything.
Okay.
And then
Me one,
we need one person who,
but is he
in the front, that's hearing,
with sign
that knows sign language
at the front.
at the front.
I was second.
And I sit second row back.
My man said,
And then the
Second.
deaf can be
Back.
second or all the way back.
what you see,
And what we do
Yeah.
is
watch the front,
the deaf, we watch the front.
when
And then when
Captain
that captain
call,
calls,
one step, me
one step means one
Two
pull
back.
back, 2 is 2. So we use these abbreviated ways of communicating.
one back,
1 back,
2 back,
2 back, we do like this.
and
And then
big,
if it's a
right,
big one,
middle,
in the
sit.
middle, we get in our seats down like
Then-
this if the rapids are bigger.
That's what follow.
And then that's kind of how we do it. But what level is it? Do you know what level, what class it is?
Captain,
The captain,
the
they look But the water itself, the level, do you know, is it like rough or medium?
Oh, it's not.
Um,
It's not water. It's wind. Same place wake up all the time.
it varies,
She knows
and that captain knows
near
the area and the river well. And if it's dangerous, we avoid those rapids. And quick question, go ahead.
You need a mic. Where do you go?
No,
I really.
Ocoee, yes, Ocoee.
all
Where do you
the
go?
every
We
year.
go there every year, every year. And
I can't
I,
even. It's a mansion.
believe me, it is absolutely
3 years
amazing.
ago,
3 years ago,
one person
one person that was deaf
and a black.
and blind,
It's women.
a female, she joined our group, whitewater rafting. She enjoyed it. She wasn't worried about falling or the rapids or whatever. And she had gone for many, many years. And what she did was she sat in the second row in the center. And I was to the side of her, making sure to keep a watch that she didn't fall out, make sure that she was safe. But she truly enjoyed it. And it was windy and feeling the water on her and everything. She had pure joy. That's awesome. Yeah. The waves, the rapids were there. It was awesome. You just can't imagine it. All right, I think.
One more thing. One more. You are phenomenal. You don't have to sign that. Let me read my lips.
Long day for you.
This is Darwin Askew, and what a joy. What a joy. Thank you so, so much taking time out of your day. We have a hard time communicating because we can't reach each other, but I thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Really quickly, we're going to pass out these cards. It has our contact information, our website, and a promo video if you want it. I'm going to be passing around, so it's up to you if you want it or not.
Absolutely.
And thank you all for your support, she says. Thank you all. Okay. You want me to pray?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's stand up. Okay. All right. Let us pray. Father, thank you so much for this Sabbath. And as the sun sets, we've had a wonderful time. We've spent time with you, Lord. You've been with us all day. Plus, we fellowship with one another. We've met people, we've seen people we knew, people we didn't know. It's been great. You know the significance of meeting and ministering to the deaf, blind, hard of hearing. You know, many times we wonder how. We do. And only you know how. We pray that you will send us your Holy Spirit with each of us, guide us, help us open people's minds. Help you, please open people's minds as we work with people and try to bring them into the fold, Lord. And help us as we minister your ministry. We can't do it without you. We're human, we're sinners, all of us. We make mistakes. We need your help. Bless each person that's here as we depart, and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.